Joanne.
I am Juanita.
And you're students of Ghana Christian International High School. And we urge you all to subscribe to His Love TV. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, everyone. I welcome you to His Golf TV. Before we begin with our discussion for today, I would like to urge you to subscribe to our channel and also share it on your various platforms for other people to also subscribe. So we are still on the National Liberation Council. Before we learned about this, we looked at the political developments that took place when the NLC, or the National Liberation Council, took over from the CPP government. And so if you happen not to watch that video, I would urge you to I have added the link below in the description under this video, so that you can go in there and watch that video and find out what were some of the social development or achievements and political achievements of the NLC before you can proceed to watch this video. So today we are looking at the criticisms or the failures of the NLC. Remember that the NLC was a military government, and we've established that the NLC already said after they overthrew Nkrumah on 26th February, they said that they were not ready. They were there as caretaker government. And I remember I explained to you that caretaker governments were people who were just there in power just for a short period of time, and then they would allow election to take place. But the NLC, which toppled the Nkrumah government in 1969, stayed in 1966. Stayed in power till 1969, which is almost 3 years, and that was too much for a government who says, or a regime which says, I am only a caretaker. I am going to give way for election to take place. For a whole 3 years, election was not taking place. So what exactly was the NLC doing? Why did they wait for so long, 3 years, before they allowed election to take place? Which then suggests that certain things were not right. Things went on. And those are the criticisms or the failures that we are going to look at today. So let's begin with our lesson objectives for today. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the reasons why the NLC became unpopular among Ghanaians or in Ghana, because they had professed that we are going to allow election to take place. However, that did not happen. And so why then were they now unpopular in the eyes of Ghanaians? And certain things really happened, which we are going to talk about today in our discussion. So let's begin with the first of such failures, or such criticisms that were leveled against them. Now, one of the criticisms was that one of such criticisms came from the politicians or the educated elite. Ambitious, of course, politicians, those who wanted to be president and rule the country. Some of these people were convinced that the military was not capable, of coping with, of course, political and economic problems that the country was facing at that time. They believed that the military was not in the right shape, mainly because, soldiers don't learn economics, soldiers don't learn politics, so their training is quite different. So they were convinced that they were not able to they can't solve the issues or the problem that was confronting the country. And so they started to criticize them, to put or to mount pressure on them. Again, these ambitious politicians also believe that if they allow the military to stay in power for too long or for a long time, there would appear some sort of division, among them. Okay, and this division may then lead to counter coups, because they feared that another military coup would happen. And when another military coup happens, it means that the country's will to return to a democratic way is going to be curtailed and is going to be stretched for another years. And so, because of these two reasons, the politicians and the educated elite mounted pressure on the NLC government to give way for election to actually take place. Okay, because they felt that the NLC had stayed on in power for too long. For 3 years, that was too long. Then the next one was that, you see, the fear of the ambitious politicians or the educated elite was realized when some people decided to also topple the Ankara government or the NLC. So there was a coup within the NLC. Some young military lieutenants, or some too young, of course, lieutenants, and some other 120 soldiers who were stationed at Coup in April 1967 tried to overthrow the Ankara government or the NLC in a military coup. Even though the coup was not, successful, it was an abortive coup, which means that it was not successful. These soldiers were caught. However, that coup influenced the course of events in two ways. All right. Now, the first way was that it drove home the point that was being emphasized by some of the politicians, that should the military be allowed to stay in office for too long, there is going to be division. The military was unstable, and that is what we already established over here. And so it came to confirm the fears of the politicians. Secondly, even though the coup was not successful, the people who, of course, conducted the coup were captured. However, it led to the death of General Kutuka. And General Kutuka was the main man. He was the center. He was the pivotal. He played a pivotal role in the coup against Kwame Nkrumah. And he was the link between the police. Okay? He served as the main link. He was the main link between the police, the soldiers, and the NLC. Okay? And so when Kutuka died, the solidarity that people or the military or the police had for the NLC got reduced. So the death of General Kutuka also affected the military or the NLC so much that their main person, who was the main link between these two people, the military and the police, as well as the NLC officials, was no more. And so that brought with it its own problem. So the NLC faced a whole lot of issues. However, the coup plotters, those who tried to coup, of course, those who tried to overthrow the NLC, as you have seen them in an image over here, they were executed by firing squad. So these people, you see them here, are hearing their sentence, and they were to be sentenced by firing squad. And then others were also slapped with long prison sentences, like 25 years in prison, and all of that. So basically, these were the two. Let's look at more of the failures or the criticisms levied against the NLC. All right, good. Now another one was also the negative outcomes of the various economic policies that the NLC or the National Liberation Council tried to engineer or spearhead. Okay, tried to engineer or spearhead. What happened was that unemployment became the order of the day. The unemployment situation in the country grew even much worse, and because of the retrenching redundant labor. So when the NLC came in a bid to protect the country's coffers, they tried to, of course, retrench or sack some of the government workers. And so that came to even compound the issue of unemployment in the in the country, and this slowed development in so many ways. All right, it slowed development in so many ways. So that was also there. Let's look at more of the again the devaluation of the cedi. You remember we said that the NLC devalued the currency. The devaluation of the cedi, which to the NLC was a means to attract more foreign investors so that they could come in and invest, or it would increase export, and then decrease import. What then happened was that this led to an increase in the cost of imported goods. And as I have already told you, I told the last time that was the effect. So imported goods that were being imported into the country became very, very expensive because of the devaluation. So the currency was devalued, the value was devalued as against the dollar. And so importation was going to be expensive. And as a country that relied so much on importation or imported goods, when you devalue your cedi or your currency, this is what is going to happen. If you don't have the industries to produce the same things that you import, it is really going to increase the cost of living. Okay, the cost of living is going to be increased. And so the NLC became quite unpopular. They became quite unpopular because of that. Furthermore, there were some other changes in the cost of even locally produced goods. You see, today, let me give you an example. Today, of course, Russia and Ukraine are fighting, and so petrol and diesel and the prices of these commodities are soaring. They are all, of course, going higher and higher. You go to the market to buy anything, and they tell you that the exchange rate or the dollar is a depreciation. So for that is why items are being expensive. Then they ask you, so plantain, yam, and kenke and whatever, what has the dollar got to do with these things? Because we don't import these things. So the issue is that when you devalue, of course, the cedi, don't forget that you use the cedis, or you change your dollar. You change your cedi to dollar to go and buy petrol. And so the imported petrol or diesel is going to be very high. The cost is going to be high. And so when it happens like that, what it means is that these plantain and yams, which are carried from the interior to the coast or to wherever, is going to be high because there is going to be an increase in fare and other things. And so even the locally manufactured produce even got, were all increased. So this, in itself, the devaluation led to a high cost of living. People could not buy items, and that became a very big problem for the NLC. Good. Let's look at the last one, and then we bring our discussion to an end. There was also a bribery scandal that came up against General Ankara, who was then the chairman of the NLC. Now, this bribery scandal happened, or it came up somewhere in 1969, on 2nd March. No, what happened was that Ankara was actually accused of collecting huge, of course, sum of money from some foreign firms or foreign companies to organize a political party, of his own. And Ankara came out to confess to this allegation. Come on, and this affected the image of the military, because the citizenry felt that the military was was a disciplined institution, and therefore they did not condone corruption. Indeed, the NLC came to overthrow the CPP because of corruption, mainly, if not for their selfish interests. And so people had confidence in the military. But with this, Ankara was forced to resign. And as you've seen in an image here, 1969 image here, as you have seen here, Ankara resigns. This is a daily graphic. Ankara had to resign. They had to force him to resign. So when he resigned, then Brigadier A.A. Afrifa took over from him. And it will surprise you that after Afrifa took over from Ankara, in just 1 month, a matter of 4 weeks, election was organized for the country to be returned to civilian rule once again. And so FIFA announced the lifting of the ban on political parties or activities. So now, of course, political parties were now formed, and general election was to be conducted for the country to return to a civilian rule. And so when you assess, or when you critically assess the situation, which then means that Ankara had an interior motive. That is why he kept on staying in power for that long and did not allow election to take place. Mainly because, probably, as they have said, or as he has confessed, he was trying to form a political party to maintain his position, And so until that was done, I'm sure that was the reason why Ankara was delaying the electoral processes to happen for a new government to take place. And so don't forget, these bribery scandals, made the people to feel that, after all, the military was not above corruption. They were also as corrupt as so. So there was a need for them to return the country to a civilian regime. Good. So thank you very much for your time. This is a question. Identify any 4 reasons that made the NLC unpopular among Ghanaians. And I know that you'll be able to do this when you come across this question anywhere, right? So have a nice day, and thank you for your time. Yes, subscribe to the channel, HisGov TV, share, and let's meet some other time, as we have done today.
HisGov TV, first among equals.